ESPN has chimed in about Georgia's newcomers. They have tabbed a player who they believe will be the best newcomer for Georgia, and that includes a very good freshman class that Kirby Smart brought in with north of 25 guys, and I believe 24 around that number enrolled early for spring football. And Georgia also brought in a record for the Dogs in 10 transfer portal players this offseason. I think at least 5 of them are going to be impact players for the Dogs this season. This 2025 Georgia team is going to feature a lot of new. So who does ESPN think the number one newcomer for the Dogs is? And they chimed in about some other teams. We'll go through that list. It's Zachariah Branch, wide receiver from USC. Zachariah Branch, there is no player this offseason for Georgia that has gotten more buzz than this shifty, speedy, wideout and kick returner that is transferred from USC and comes from Bishop Gorman High School out there in Las Vegas. He was one of the most sought-after players in the transfer portal. I think depending on which site you look at, he was roughly a top 10 guy, and I think some sites had him as one of the top 10 players in the transfer portal, one of the top receivers. There were a handful of really good wide receivers in the transfer portal. Georgia got 2 of them in Zachariah Branch and wide receiver from Texas A&M, Noah Thomas. But they think that Branch will be the best newcomer. I'll read you some of the blurb that ESPN wrote about Branch, and I thought they said something interesting about one of Georgia's freshman receivers that's coming in. A couple of exciting offensive weapons for Georgia in this 2025 recruiting class as well. But Zachariah Branch, he has been arguably, like I said it a second ago, but arguably the most talked about Georgia Bulldog this offseason. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about transfer players, right? This is a big part of college football right now, and it's a bigger part of Georgia football than it has ever been. Zachariah Branch, is he Georgia's best newcomer? I wrote an article. You can go check this out on dogpost.com. It dropped about a week ago, a little bit over a week ago, and it's a premium story, so subscribe if you're not. And I talked about, hey, look, these are the transfer portal players that Kirby Smart brought in to make an immediate impact for Georgia. Zachariah Branch is towards the top of that list for a couple of reasons. One, Georgia needs talent at wide receiver. All right, wide receiver was one of the many issues for the Dogs in 2024, leading the country in drops, just not a lot of momentum, no real star, and no impact pass catcher that really stepped up after they had Brock Bowers, Lab McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, George Pickens over the last few years. They had a lot of big names that were major targets in the passing game, and last year's group just didn't get the job done that way. Well, they go out and they get Noah Thomas, they go out and they get Zachariah Branch. But Branch, as a receiver, what he brings is shiftiness and speed that is not very common, right? And I've kind of said it a couple times, but imagine kind of a Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith blend, that type of athlete where speed and shiftiness, he's an explosive football player. And you saw that on display at G-Day a little bit, and apparently it was on display for a lot of the spring. So, with Branch, you get that. You get someone that can kind of take the top off the defense, someone that can probably take a screen pass for a long touchdown. But you also get a guy that can make things happen on special teams in the return game. His freshman season, he brought a kickoff and a punt back for USC. He wasn't the primary guy. He didn't have as many returns in 2024 as he did in his true freshman season in 2023 over there in Southern California. But he shows that explosiveness, and I've mentioned it. He showed that explosiveness in the return game at G-Day when he shifted. Man, he got around a lot of guys. I still to this day don't know why Kirby blew the play dead. Maybe he just wanted to see the offense have a possession. But Zachariah Branch just zips around a bunch of guys, takes a punt back from inside the 10, and by the time he's sprinting down the sideline around the 50-yard line, and I think he's going to go potentially all the way, they blow the whistle. But he showed that he can do that for Georgia, and that was another thing that just wasn't as good a year ago either. Georgia's punt return and kick return numbers were much more down than they had been in the past, and Branch, they showed it. He is Georgia's main return guy already. So it's twofold. That's part of the impact and why I agree. Maybe he's Georgia's most impactful transfer. I think you can argue potentially Elo Modozi from Army, the pass rusher, the outside linebacker. I think he's a player that's going to make a big impact. I think that Josh McCray, the running back from Illinois, I think he'll make an impact and provides a change of pace. And look, he's a senior. He was brought in to play. If you're McCray, you don't just go to Georgia to have this little experience in your last year of college football. You go because you know you're going to play. I think he was brought in to be a change of pace and depth behind Nate Frazier and just to add to the room. And like I said in another video, add another hammer to the room, something that Georgia's running back toolbox was missing a season ago with both Roderick and Branson Robinson injured. I think he'll make an impact. I think Noah Thomas, the other receiver, 6'5", 6'6", pretty smooth as an athlete for his size. I think he'll make an impact. I think that Georgia brought in 3 transfer safeties, Jaden Harris, Adrian Maddox, Zion Branch. One of them's probably going to win one of the starting safety jobs. My guess is Adrian Maddox. So I think that there are starters across the board that Kirby brought in from the transfer portal. But I understand why people say Zachariah Branch. One, he was the highest rated, and not just in this portal, but like when you go back and look at high school, this guy was a 5-star. He was a top 10 recruit. He was the number 1 receiver in the 2023 class. He's a big deal, and he's a big talent. Now, if you ask me, I think he underperformed a little bit at USC to what his talent is. And maybe he's not an alpha receiver, and those are things that need to be considered when you think about Zachariah Branch. But there's no question that he can make an impact for the Georgia Bulldogs. This is what I believe it was Billy Tucker is the one that did this article for ESPN. I'll read you a little bit of what they said about Branch and what to expect. And it's interesting because they mentioned Talon Taylor, true freshman wide receiver that's also gotten a lot of buzz. If you go and watch Talon Taylor highlights on YouTube, go check him out. If you're, especially if you're a Georgia fan on here, he's someone to get excited about as a future weapon for Georgia. I don't know that he'll crack the lineup a lot because I think Georgia's wide receiver room is actually crowded all of a sudden. But Taylor, this is what he's in this first sentence is why I'm prefacing this, but this is about Branch. While Talon Taylor will have an impactful season as a true freshman, I don't know about that, Branch has experience. He has been one of college football's truly dynamic talents with the ball in his hands. He arrived in college with a 4.39 40-yard dash speed and became an instant playmaker for the Trojans in the return game. He was the program's first ever true freshman All-American, first team All-American, and that was because of the return ability. After his production stagnated as a sophomore, he hopped in the portal. His playmaking ability is a welcomed addition for the Georgia offense that led all FBS programs with 36 receiver drops, and he should make things easier for Gunnar Stockton. He could have his best season of his career in Athens. That's basically what they're saying. Look, he's explosive. He is an exciting talent. When you think about this is whoever is starting quarterback for Georgia this coming season, and it's going to be Gunnar Stockton, this is their first year as a starter. Now, Gunnar's been around for a long time, and this is year 4, so he's not some true freshman that's getting thrown into the fire, but Gunnar hasn't played a lot of college football. Right? He's practiced a lot, and Georgia practice is valuable experience, but he doesn't have a lot of game experience. He has some garbage time. He has like a quarter and a half against Florida State's JV squad in the Orange Bowl, and he's got the second half against, now his significant experience is the second half of the SEC Championship against Texas, which he helped them win that game, and then the Sugar Bowl loss to Notre Dame in the college football playoff this past season. So he does have some legitimate experience, but he needs help. And last year's supporting group, if you took that and it was the same this year, that's just not going to be good enough for a guy who doesn't have the experience and probably doesn't have the arm talent that Carson Beck had. So you think about bringing in a Zachariah Branch. You think about bringing in a Noah Thomas. These guys are going to be really impactful players. If you ask me who's the most impactful, I probably will falter and say Branch as well because of the return ability too. But I'm not in the boat that's convinced he's going to be this like 800, 900, 1,000-yard wide receiver. I think Georgia will spread the ball around, and I think you'll see Georgia improve in the running game as well with an emphasis on that. But they didn't have someone like this last year. That doesn't mean he's going to be amazing, but they didn't have someone like this last year. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Leave that in the comments below.